All right. So, what is our main statement for this video? What are we
War,
doing?
war starts on Christmas. Is that what this is?
This is a Christmas, Hanukkah, winter, a whole lot of scripture, and yeah, lots of stuff's been going on kind of video. There you go. I don't know what else to call it because it's a lot. But hopefully we'll just read through it real quickly and make this as quick as possible. So, anyway, we'll start here in Revelation 11 in verse 8. Well, actually, a little bit back, just to show you that this is when they finish their testimony, the beast that is sent out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and kill them. So this is talking about the two witnesses here in Revelation 11. And it says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth."
Yeah, it just seems to be like a reference back to Christmas and almost that um you can see making merry and giving gifts and the spiritual it says spiritually is Sodom and Egypt, and that is kind of like, well, you see the name of the channel, leaving spiritual Egypt. This is a lot of this prophecy is starts in the spiritual before it develops in the physical, and I'm gonna send you a video to another, or a link to another channel, the Torah family and the 1 year tribulation, things like that, and how I'm going to explain this is I believe a lot of these people who are saying that 7 year tribulation hasn't started because it's not that bad, things like that, is because right now we're seeing a spiritual fulfillment of a lot of things, and we're even seeing the physical fulfillment start to happen. And as we see the seals and the bowls and all these judgments come, it's not like they're immediately as bad as what we see at the worst of them. We see them like slowly start to develop and get worse over time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that the end is going to be that worst of it. But here, and then we see the earthquake and stuff like that. We'll see that in more of the verses that we're going to look at. The earthquake mentioned around this Christmas time, and then we're going to look at some articles and stuff that goes with that too. Let's go to the next verse, unless you have something else.
No. All right. So obviously Jeremiah, this one's been, I think, hashed out quite a bit. For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. So, again, just another shadow picture of what we kind of see today, pretty much. It's literally fastened like that, and decked like that, and upright. Yeah. And I mean, not to mention that's been something that's been passed down through multiple cultures, whether you call it a Christmas tree or not. It goes way further back than just Christmas. And
Yeah, you could even look up and see like ancient paintings and carvings of where people are decorating what looks to be like a Christmas tree, and it was way before Christmas. It's definitely a pagan custom to do.
yeah.
Whether or not this specific instance where it's talking about right here is that, like I said before, it is a shadow picture of things that we need to look for. So we need to, if we see anything that looks like something like this is being explained, it should be a red flag.
So, Jeremiah 2. Alright, so starting in 8, it says, The priest said not, Where is the Lord? And they that handle the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after things that do not profit. Wherefore I will yet plead with you, saith the Lord, and with your children's children will I plead. For pass over the isles of Chittim, and see, and send unto Kedar, and consider diligently, and see if there be such a thing. Hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods, but my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. Be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid, be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. But further on there, yeah, quite a bit there. But point being here, yeah, hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods. So a nation changed who it is they worship to basically the creation or the gods that were worshipped before.
Yeah. And it's almost like, do you see now where, like, everyone's like, well, we're just doing Christmas. We're not worshiping our tree, or we're not worshiping these gods. We're not doing this for that reason. It's just what we do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they've taken the gods out of it, and they're still worshiping the things of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So again, Judges 2, probably starting in 11, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served Baalim. They forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods, of the gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. And they forsook the Lord, and served Baal and Ashtaroth. And Ashtaroth is essentially another name for Ishtar. And Diana, she has multiple names, but she is the same fertility goddess as pretty much Ishtar. So that is who we end up always going after, are Baal and Ashtaroth. The Easter, and then we sacrifice to Moloch in winter.
Yeah, it's Christmas and Easter. That's right. What those 2 are. The holidays are to them. And that's where we're at now.
And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of the spoilers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. And okay, so this is what I liked about this. So anger became hot, but whithersoever they went out, the hand of the Lord was against them for evil, as the Lord had said, and as the Lord had sworn unto them, and they were greatly distressed. Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hands of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them, and they turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not so. So, again, nothing new under the sun. There's judges that are brought up. There's warnings. There's always prophets. There's always something that gets brought up, and the warning's never heard or listened to. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, and following other gods to serve them, bow down unto them, cease not doing from their own doings, nor from their stubborn way.
It sounds very familiar.
Right? Pretty much.
And it's crazy because, like, at first, like, I was so excited to go tell everybody about some of the stuff, and then after a few times you go tell people and you're, like, excited to show them, and they look at you like you're insane about, like, wanting to, like, leave Christmas behind and being happy about it. It's like, okay.
Right. Alright, so Numbers 25. I don't remember how far I go into this one, but we'll see. So Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. So we have another instance where someone's being called unto, well, sacrifices, but what are sacrifices usually associated with? Feasts, because they're
Yep.
eating. So they're being called to these feasts, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. I can't remember if it's a verse that we've brought up here that we might go over or not, but I remember there being one where it points out that they went after these gods, but they didn't realize that they were going after these gods. Like they got tricked into following these gods just because that's kind of how it got
Yeah,
passed down to
well,
them. I can't remember what that verse is, but they
people don't
didn't
realize.
understand that they were strange gods.
Yeah, well, but and that's like today. People don't realize that sitting down and making a table with certain things on the table, like pork. Like if you make a party and you set a table, right, and you're having drinks on it and you have a meat centerpiece and all that, that is a covenant table. And depending on what your God you're serving in that time, and when you're sitting down for that covenant meal in a party in a feast type situation, you're serving either Yah or you are serving something else, which is Satan essentially, like or his minions. You know what I mean? One of the fallen angels or another god.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at or what you're doing and things like that. But when you start incorporating these traditions, they're essentially rituals to these deities. And you can't separate that. And you cannot put Yahuwah's name on that. You can't do that. It's just not. We see it over and over again. That's what they try to do, and then that's why people are destroyed. Yep, because it's a tradition of the elder, tradition
Why do
of
ye also
men.
transgress the commandment of God by your tradition?
And then Colossians 2, everyone uses 2:16 to 17, but they don't look at the whole chapter. And if you pull the whole chapter up and you read it with them, a lot of people will get angry and just shut down all the way. Like they'll be like, well, they were talking about those traditions in the Old Testament, not our traditions now. No, they were talking about the things that had been added at that point. Like there's so much stuff if you get into Judaism, which we talk about sometimes.
Right.
And then that's
But
where we go with Hanukkah.
not only that, but I mean, you can't even use that because read it. Let them know. Therefore, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day, new moon, or Sabbath. Who celebrates the Sabbaths? Who celebrates the new moon? And who celebrates holy days? Not to mention what is a holy day.
Context.
What is a holy day?
It's God's holy days, and then you have to respect context because
A feast
what
day.
is the context here? Who is Paul talking to here? He is talking to a Gentile church who would be trying to come out of these pagan traditions. They would be probably refusing swine from their family and dealing with judgment. They would be keeping Sabbath and dealing with judgment from their family and friends because they're all pagan. They weren't dealing with Jews. They weren't dealing with judgment from Jews telling them that they needed to keep Sabbath and all that stuff because they were Gentiles living in an area surrounded by Gentiles. And that context needs to be recognized because what's happening now, it's a similar context. We are completely surrounded by paganism and the ways of the nations. And as soon as you step out of that and you say, I'm not eating pork and I'm not celebrating Christmas or I'm going to do these holy days, I'm going to start doing new moon. Oh man, you start doing new moons and that's a whole nother attack even from within the Torah community.
Don't judge me in my new moon.
It seems like every step closer you take, the attacks come harder. Like you stop doing Saturday Sabbath and you go to the lunar Sabbath and you get a fight and it's like, oh.
This is why when I did my study on new moon, I did it on new moon because new moon in and of itself is used and has a different term depending on what language. And in this particular language, in this particular verse, it's quite obvious. We could argue definition, like direct translations all day, but it doesn't change the fact that it gets used throughout the Bible as this. This is New
And then
Testament,
we could look at like this Christmas, and the things that are happening, this year. This Christmas would have been on the lunar cycle, a Sabbath and a new moon, Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then you can see like what happened.
Yeah.
With all this. No. All right. So what's next?
All right. Ooh, is this the one? Yeah, so this is Isaiah 24, and I wanted to read it. I think what we were pointing out was further down, but I just wanted to read this because it's awesome. So starting in verse 1, Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down. So for those of you who know a little bit about what our Earth actually looks like and knows that the polar flips, we have north and south like theories on the top and the bottom rather than, well, not top and bottom of a round globe, as in what we live on, a flat plane, there's a top and a bottom of it, underneath and above. So there's the Earth underneath us, the deep depths below us with the black sun. But anyway, just a thought. So he turneth it upside down and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with the mistress, and the buyer and the seller, and the lender and the borrower, and the taker of usury and the giver of usury. The land shall be utterly emptied and utterly spoiled, for the Lord hath spoken this word. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languish and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Now, something I want to mention here, because a lot of people look at this one and they say the earth fadeth away, but then we have other verses that say the earth is our inheritance and the earth is for eternity, which is why I brought up this turneth upside down. Because when it says earth mourneth and fadeth away, if the earth fadeth away completely, there would be no men left. But if you remember, I don't remember who it was, there was a promise that, I think it was Enoch, getting the visions, but hearing about the dome, basically the dome coming down, all the stars, everything crashing down. And they said, I think his father told him to pray, and he's like, pray that some men would be left so that our inheritance wouldn't be taken. Like, pray that there would be a small remnant on the earth when this happens. And so he did, and that is our promise, that there would be a remnant left whenever these things keep happening. So, now, few men left. The wine more, if you know that the wine, the vine, and the mirth, and all these, some of these have different symbolism, so it's not literally just basic this. It's hard to read into the actual spiritual aspect of it. But the new wine mourneth, the vine languish, all the merry-hearted do sigh, the mirth of tabrets cease, the noise of them that rejoice endeth, the joy of the harp ceaseth. They shall not drink wine with a song, strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. The city of confusion is broken down, every house is shut up that no man may come in. There is a crying for wine in the streets. I don't know if you all know what wine is. I wonder if it shows it in here. Usually you have to do a word study on wine to find out, but let's see if it
word study on wine and all this, and I want to say that we have whole studies on first fruits, wine, the grapes, right. All that goes with this idea and theme.
Easiest would just to be considered the New Testament. Like, what is when he did the communion? What was the wine?
It was his blood. Yeah.
So. And
I think in this time, like, okay, yes, ultimately this is a symbol of his blood, what he did for us, all that. However, I believe when we looked at the different harvests, I think that the grapes have to do with the wine, and I have a feeling that this has to do with the stubborn believers, the rebellious believers that get left behind and that somehow make it through and come into obedience through being completely crushed.
And turn
And
to
that's
wine, yeah.
the wine. Yeah, like they're the wine that comes in at the end when there's, like the multitudes and stuff like that. Because like now we're seeing many coming in and trying to get people like into the feast. Like that's where we're at now. We see people like, come on, get to the wedding, right?
Right.
And then now I believe there's people who are the great that are looking at us right now like, no, we're not coming, we're not listening, you guys are crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, that stuff. I believe that those are the greats. I don't think that they're quote unquote not saved, that they're going to hell. I think that they just have some things that they have to go through in order to come through as wine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I
Definitely.
feel.
Yeah. But I just say, wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires, even in the name of the Lord God. So the other thing with the fires that purify and the things that go down and everything that happens, just glorify him in that, because, where's the verse? It's for our good. As hard as it is to understand, he has a tendency to properly punish the children that he wants to become righteous, the chosen children. Like, he's going to punish you. If he didn't love you, he would just let you go off and do whatever. Like, because it's like Jacob and Esau. You have Jacob, which he punished quite well, and Jacob became quite righteous. But then Esau, he just let go off and do whatever he wanted to do, and Esau had a lot of riches in the world. So he looked like he was quite blessed in the worldly aspect with everything that he was given, but really it was Jacob that he loved, and Jacob was the one that he was much more strict on. So yes, these fires and these things that we're going to go through, or whoever ends up having to go through them, just remember that is for your good, just like in the wilderness. It was rough, but it was for the sake of learning so that you could be with him. Because otherwise, if you don't go through that process and you're just utterly left behind, then he's not going to choose you, because you'll be with the rest of the evil, the sinners that remain outside of New Jerusalem. So, trying to think if there's anything else in this one that I wanted to. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and they shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Which is another thing I thought was interesting. They're going to be shut up, but after many days they'll be visited. Anyway, then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before his ancients gloriously. And this is actually talked about more, I think, in Enoch? Yeah, Enoch.
I was gonna say, like, you should like check that verse for our calendar studies, because that was the one thing we were talking about, the moon.
Yes,
the
this
moon
happens
being,
for the sinners.
Yeah, her own peculiar thing or whatever.
Right.
The
So it says that those in New Jerusalem will be able to see and understand the things that are going on with the stars. Like, they'll be able to see the hosts and read them and everything, but those on the outside, it will be confounded. If you think about it, it also says the sun will be over those in New Jerusalem at all times. So things change in the sky during this time to where those that are in the New Jerusalem area will have that, and then everybody else, the sky is going to start looking different, and they're not going to be able to figure out things. It's hidden from the sinners. So, and Jehu gathered all the people together and said unto them, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu served him much. Now therefore call unto me all the prophets of Baal and his servants and all his priests. Let none be wanting, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did it in subtlety to the intent that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. And Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left that came not. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, Bring forth vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments. And Jehu went, and Jehonadab, the son of Rehab, into the house of Baal, and said unto the worshippers of Baal, Search and look that there be here with you none of the servants of the Lord, but the worshippers of Baal only. And when they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men without, and said, If any of the men whom I have brought into your hand escape, he that letteth him go, his life shall be for the life of him. And it came to pass, as soon as he made an end of offering the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard and the captains, Go in and slay them, let none come forth. And they smote them with the edge of the sword, and the guard and the captains cast them out, and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal, and burned them. And they brake down the image of Baal, and brake down the house of Baal, and made it draught house unto this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel.
And that's I think basically this was a literal them deceiving to destroy them at a feast or whatever. But I think that we see it spiritually now. People have been deceived into going to these feasts that are super materialistic, and they've become more of a competition of who can buy more, who has the biggest, the most gifts, the best gifts, things like that. For all of them, and it's almost like a mirror of, God's ways. Because what do? We meet times a year for most people: birthday, Christmas, and Easter, and it's all super selfish, me, all about gifts, all materialistic, all sin, gluttony, overeating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all in supposedly in the name of good, but
Right.
I just see there's so much more to it once you step out of it.
Yeah. I mean, and all it takes is a little bit of study into mythology, and then looking at all the different gods that have been worshipped, and it's literally all the gods are the same. They look the same, slight different names, their name changes throughout cultures, but all their symbolism is exactly the same, and it's the exact same symbolism that's on Easter and Christmas. So, and it goes way further back than the Catholic Church starting Christmas. It goes way further back than just the name of Saturnalia, because I've heard people say that, well, Saturnalia didn't start till this time, so that has nothing to do with it. And I'm like, yes, but Saturnalia was a new name for the exact same celebration that had happened previously. You can't just go back on one term and assume, okay, well, that was the end of that term, or that was the beginning of that term, so that's as far back in history as it goes. That's not how it works. You have to go... Just look at the symbolism. It's everywhere, and it makes it extremely obvious what gods you are worshiping when you look at the symbols. Yeah. And he did indeed say not to worship me in the way they worship their gods, because even they sacrifice children to their gods. These are the ways they worship their gods, with these symbols.
And then when you do it, you fall into this lifestyle that it's just not good overall. Right.
But I found something interesting also in Leviticus, so I want to go over to that, because this is our actual commandments here. So, let's see. Let me grab my notes real quick so I actually know where we're at, what verses, because apparently I didn't highlight the verses, because I'm awesome like that. Okay, so starting in verse 3, we see what kind of offering is it? A male without blemish. You offer it of your own voluntary will, and at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. So one thing I wanted to point out here in this verse was actually to look at definitions, because I believe that it was intentionally mistranslated for the sake of you not understanding what this says. So obviously, male without blemish, we know who that is. We know that it's a voluntary thing that we do, but where? At the tabernacle of the congregation. So let's go. Tabernacle. So at the tent or dwelling place. So at the dwelling place of what, right? And then we have of the congregation. But those of you who know the word...
Seriously?
Yes, it seriously says it, but nobody pointed this out.
So,
you are supposed to, at your dwelling place of these feasts, sacrifice, place your hand, because the point was to put your hand on the animal sacrifices back then. So instead we place our hand on Yehoshua now. So it literally tells us in Leviticus, if you translate it properly to English, that you are to offer up Yehoshua of your own free will at the dwelling place of the feast. Or the feasts, is what it says. Why that got translated to congregation, I have no idea. Probably so you wouldn't understand that it was literally commanding you to go to the feast, and that your sacrifice of Yehoshua was supposed to be done on the feast days.
Yeah, the way the translations have come across over the years, this definitely has there's some deception in there.
Yeah, that's intentional. This is the great deception so that everybody would be fooled, except for those who actually truly put their heart and soul into trying to figure out the truth and didn't care what the truth was. They just wanted to be children of God and they wanted to serve him. So but we'll go further even into Leviticus 2, which I found interesting as well. So if you read it, it says, and when any will offer a meat offering unto the Lord, his offering shall be of fine flour, and he shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense thereon. That looks like a contradiction if you ask me. What meat offering is in flour and bread and frankincense and oil? And so obviously we have meat here. If you look at the New Testament, the words in the Old tend to be physical. The words in the New Testament tend to have showing you the spiritual meaning. So meat is obviously you offer a much more, it's not going to show it here because it's going to say meat. It might, I don't know. But I don't think so. I think it's going to literally. But it's the more in-depth learning, right? But offering to God here, a gift, whatever. But when I see the word meat, I see that as being a much more like in-depth because you have the milk and then you have the meat. So much more fine presence or much more deep gift to him. But it'll be of fine flour. Oh, I didn't look this up. So I was just looking to get fine flour. And if you look at the unused root meaning to strip as chipped off, and if you look at the process of wheat to flour, you recognize how difficult it is to get to. It's just the chipping off of sins to get to the fine flour. And then you pour the oil on it, which we're going to look at the oil here in a little bit to see what the oil is, but eventually we'll show you Yeshua or Yehoshua and Torah. We'll get there. But you pour that on it, and then the frankincense. This is a very spiritual thing here that you're offering. You're stripping off your sins, and you're pouring Torah over yourself. You're pouring the righteous aspects of your life pouring that back into your life and getting rid of your sin. And burning incense is just, I haven't fully figured that one out, but I see the incense all over the place.
More to it, even like the frankincense and like its property, there you could go so deep into every aspect of this.
I actually use frankincense too.
A whole study on flour, a whole study on oil, a whole study on frankincense, and put it all together. Like we could spend a long time just on that and the offerings and the symbolism in each alone. I think that could be one of those things we spend a long time on.
And then just, of course, unleavened. So that's just pointing out your sin-free, and then mingled with righteousness, Torah, whatever. So, but I liked the way, I wanted to look up Leviticus just because of the way that the commandments are pointing out that this is actually the spiritual, if you understand how to read it. This is still active today. It's just spiritual. It's not gone.
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out, like, the unleavened bread, that's the removing the sin,
Yeah.
like you said, the breaking down of the flour. That's the work that you put into getting yourself to
Yeah.
that point where you're removing the sin from your life. And then the oil is you walking out the word. So it's not even just like, because some things it's not necessarily sin, but they're like what I would call a positive command.
Yeah.
So,
And then, of course, in the New
like,
Testament, you have that feast. Let us celebrate this feast not with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened. I can't remember how it's worded. Unleavened or whatever of spirit and truth.
yeah, so you're walking it out spiritually, like how we speak of removing the sin out of your life during unleavened bread. And in that season, as we are physically cleaning our house, because it's good to have a schedule and a routine. And that's another thing, like physically, it's good to have the Sabbath because it keeps us in routine. It's good to keep the new moons because it resets those Sabbaths and gives you that extra day to how did I do this month in my Sabbath and how could I do better? And whatever. So we have these routines and it's built into his word. We have a diet that's built into his word and it's all for our benefit. But then we have these feasts that yes, it's a meeting time. It's a time for fellowship and for giving gifts, but it's also a time to reflect. What sin do I have in my life? What do I need to get out of it? We're doing that in the fall, and we're really kind of doing it again. I mean, in the spring, and then we're doing it again in the fall if we really like look at it, because when we go through atonement, we're again looking at how do we need to reconcile with our brothers and sisters? What things do we need to get out of our lives? And if we pay attention, there will be a lot of temptations around those times too. Um, and a lot of I don't know, just a lot of people pushing you to do things that are not necessarily right and go against your conviction.
Right. All right. I'm going to move on to Esther. So, another thing that came up, along with the oil stuff in Leviticus, I think, let's see. So, we'll just start in verse 3. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes and provinces being before him. So, I don't want to have to read all of it, but they did a whole bunch of adorning and everything, so they did everything up for the feast. But we also find that also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. So we see a situation where the king is making a feast, and he's preparing for it, and then we have the queen going off and making her own feasts. And then on the 7th day, the king commands his chamberlains to go bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times. I thought this was interesting. Why did the king say to the wise, or why was it important to point out that the wise men knew the times? For so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. So the wise men understood what was going on here, and it was much more important. But anyway, so what should we do to Vashti according to law, because she's not performed the commandment? And it says, for this deed of the queen shall come abroad. What? Yeah, I'm trying to find the actual.
Where it says, like, he puts her away.
Yeah. Yeah, here it is. That Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. So we all know this story, but there's something that we're missing in this story. Obviously, there's 2 feasts. He created a feast, the king. The king is the most important figure here, not the queen, not the bride. So when a king sets a feast sets a feast up and calls the queen or the bride or the people forward, you attend that feast. And when you don't, you become like her and you get turned away, and he goes after and finds another, and he ends up finding Esther, who...
So I just had a verse pop in my head. Matthew, I think maybe it's Matthew either 7 or 5.
There we go. Yep, right here. So not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of the Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you, depart from me, ye that work from iniquity. Ye that work iniquity.
So this, in combination with, what was the other one, Matthew 22, I see these as like,
And iniquity means the condition of without law, because of ignorant of violating it, contempt and violation of law. And then Matthew 22, yes. So Matthew 22 goes along with Esther. So obviously we see the story of Esther, and most of you know it. But then, of course, we have this where it says, and Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parable and said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent forth other servants, saying, tell them which are bidden, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen, my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready, come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then saith he to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out to the highways, and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment, and he said to him, Friend, how camest thou in hither having not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. So again, we have a feast for a king, which this happens many times. Actually, we might have a couple more coming up here for feasts.
Yeah, you can see Luke right there. It kind of shows the parallels of these verses too.
Yeah.
We go see it. And,
oh, this is King Solomon. Yep. So, hold on. All right. So then we move on to King Solomon, and we see what happens to him. I kind of want to bring up the ones before. So what was it, like 9? It starts to bring up, because you see some things happening where he kind of starts getting things given to him after a while. Yeah, cities given. So now here I am, the king of Tyre had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees and gold according to his desire, according to all his desire. So King Solomon is starting to get a lot of stuff according to his desire.
Hold on, we take it back a little bit, and before this, right after he finished the temple, he made his own feast to Yah. And then after that, it was like a slow trickle away. Like he started by making his own feast, and then he started accepting these gifts from other nations and their gods. And then he's, you know what I mean? Like he's slowly fading away.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to that portion where it was, we had looked at it in another video, so I don't know we necessarily have to repeat it, but I just wanted to add that in there, where he had the piece right before this. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. And then so the trees, the six score talents of gold. I'm trying to see if I can find them all in here without having to actually read everything. What you'll start to see somewhere. Alright, and fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to the king Solomon. And 10. She comes up and gives lots of gifts.
10:14.
Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Beside that, he had of the merchantmen which we know a lot about the merchantmen by now, hopefully, and of the traffic of the spice merchants and of all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the country. Had 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one target. He made 300 shields of beaten gold, 3 pound. Yes. So anyway, just looking at the way that these come in and the numbers included in them and the merchants, you're starting to see slowly over time, all his drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None of it were silver. So he's basically given everything he could possibly ever want, all of which has to be quite symbolic of things that come out. Next verse is where it's actually at, though. And then 600 shekels of silver and horses from, I believe that, he had, out of Egypt, he had the horses and the silver. All right, and then we see in chapter 11 is where we see the end of this problem. So, but King Solomon loved many strange women together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. So it says, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. So this is not just, obviously it's talking about women, but what happens when you take in people from other nations? So in his case, it was pretty much all this stuff. He was taking in everything from everywhere, and even the women, and it slowly turned his heart away. So he had all these women that were after other gods. And then who did he go after with all these women? For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Ashtaroth is Diana, Ishtar, again. So we see same problematic idol being used, or god being worshipped again. So he built a high place for Hamosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods, and the Lord was angry with him, because his heart was turned from the Lord of God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice. So not keeping the covenant and the statutes.
Yeah, and that's crazy. He had God appear to him twice, and
Right?
he still turned away from him. So, like, all these people who swear, they're saved, once saved, always saved, they know they're saved, whatever, but a lot of these people never really had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. They never really have had that. So, for someone like this to have turned away, like, how much more all of these Christians that are very lukewarm.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And then we have 2 Kings, or 20-year-old Ahaz, right? Did not that which was right in the sight of the Lord his God, like David his father, but he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and made his son to pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the heathen whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted on this one. But just another thing, them going to this, if you know, pass through the fire is specifically Moloch, or whatever many names he's been given. It's that statue that they use to pass through the fire. Wintertime, you have Ashtaroth in the springtime, and then you have the babies that are made from the orgies in the springtime and the spring festival are sacrificed when they're born come wintertime as a thank you for the fertility. So this is that same exact God that they're worshiping here. Right. And so the oil, because we were looking at Leviticus and oil, and I was just looking at oil, and then we have of course, the parable of the 10 virgins. Well, let's read that first. So So everyone kind of knows it. Obviously, there's 5 wise virgins and there's 5 foolish ones, and they all take their lamps, and the ones that were foolish had no oil. And while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept, and at midnight a cry was made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose, trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Like the door to the ark, to Noah's ark was shut, same thing. If you don't have the oil at that point, if you don't have any left... So it doesn't point out how much these wise virgins have. It just says that they have oil. However, these foolish ones have absolutely no oil whatsoever. They're completely out, and they have to go get more. These guys had at least some. There's no telling how much, but they had at least some. So obviously, we have a situation where you have to have oil. So what is oil? And what is the purpose of oil? So if you do a word study on oil, you will find that they pour oil on top of things to consecrate them. So, poured oil on that pillar, this pillar, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, I like this, the way it's putted, that they bring the pure oil olive, beaten for the light, who is the light, to cause the lamp to burn always.
Yep.
That is a beautiful picture.
The wine, like the oil comes from a fruit, and then the fruit has to be crushed in order to get that oil. So like we can't give that to somebody. We cannot go through that crushing for someone. It's almost like you have to go through these things that teach you the things in order to do it. And when you walk out these commands, you will see how they crush you as you are walking them out. You know what I mean? Because you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose family. You're going to lose friends. It crushes you. And even trials and things in your life that get you, away from other sin and things. These are all things that will get you oil. It's the crushing that comes with walking out the commandments.
Correct. It's a holy anointing oil that causes the items in the... See if I can find it. All of the items in the temple. So if we are the temple, and if all the items in the temple were supposed to have oil poured over them to anoint them and make them holy, then our temple the temple is inside of us, and we need to pour that oil on ourselves to make it holy. And in order for us to be holy inside, we have to live a holy life, a righteous life. So in order to do that, you need Torah, you need Yehoshua, you need the information that comes along with that to tell you how to become righteous, how to get that oil. And if you look at it I don't like saying the word occult, but if you just look at the way that the body is set up and the oil that can go up and down, and if you look at the way they pointed out, the way they will say that the oil is saved by doing moral behavior and by good healthy diet and being loving and all that stuff. It's the way you act, and acting out holiness saves your oil. If you spend your entire life doing nothing but sinful stuff and never trying to work towards a righteous life, then you're out of oil. You have no oil. You've wasted it all on living a worldly life. So the oil here is why we likened it to Yehoshua and Torah, because it is the actions, basically, the living out the holy, righteous life. But I don't know if there's... No, this is all still Leviticus. Wow, it's used up a lot. Okay, that would be a long study if we did it all. But that's what we're looking at when we look at the parable of the 10 vineyards, or the 10 virgins. The foolish virgins had no oil whatsoever. They were not living righteous lives whatsoever. These ones had at least some. So I don't know if it was full, But then you look at the story from Hanukkah and Maccabees. We were going to read Maccabees. But if you just look at the story of Hanukkah and the fact that they had only enough oil for one day, but Yehovah miraculously extended that oil until the 8th day when they were able to create more oil. So I see that as you don't necessarily have to have a full lamp, because you can be extended miraculously by Yehovah if you have some oil in you till the 8th day, which, if we know what the 8th day is, that's past the 7,000 year period, so that's after the Sabbath, moving into the next cycle. Then yeah, that covers the amount of oil that you need for this entire time. If you have at least enough, if you're trying and learning, and I think that again is where we come in. He can only know your heart at that point.
Yeah.
But, so how much oil do you actually have in you, and how much oil, or how much of it, what you're saying to the world is fake? So I can't say for sure where your heart is and where your process is and how much of what you're denying and what you're not. So that's up to him. But I think there is a lesson there that you don't necessarily have to be perfect. But you definitely need some oil. Otherwise, he won't have anything to extend to the 8th day. You'll be completely out and you'll be destroyed.
Now,
I feel like Maccabees. There we go. So in Maccabees, you had, let me double check. 46 and 48. Right. Okay. So here. And forbid burnt. Oh wait. That works too. And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath days and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, profane, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinance. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. So essentially, this is what they forced. Oops, I can't highlight, I guess. But this is what they changed it to. They set up this stuff. The groves, the altars, the idols, the swine, the unclean beasts, the uncircumcised, which if you know the spiritual aspect of the circumcision is the circumcision of the heart. But still, point being, uncircumcised, making their souls abominable and unclean. And making them forget the law and to change all the ordinances.
Yeah, and the things that they were doing in this time would be the equivalent of a Christmas Easter celebration today. They were doing, those pagan celebrations in God's temple in that time. They were sacrificing swine, and that's what they were feeding to everybody. And now today we have that happening, and it's like almost like you have a peer pressure that if you're not partaking in these things, like something's wrong with you and you're not saved and all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just almost just like this deception you see, but this is that is basically Christmas. Yes, it wasn't called Christmas. It was probably Yule or Saturnalia or whatever version of it they had in that period. But it's the same thing. And now we just do it for fun and throw Jesus' name on there, Yeshua's name on there.
Yeah. Oh, and then if you look, I think I have another article too. Let me see if I can get it switched over. But I
feel like it's more fitting to say Jesus when you do that, because they won't use his true name, and it's probably a good thing that they're not using his true name when they are doing these things, because at least there's still some respect to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If we're actually using his name while doing this stuff, I think their judgment will probably be worse.
All right, so in here, this is a good article, Rajist, on this. It's extremely long, and it covers a lot, and it does have references, and that's why I like it, because it shows you where all this stuff comes from, all the different traditions. Yeah, super long. Lots of references so that you know, but I want to read you something specific from this article. So, the Catholic Encyclopedia 1911 under Christmas. Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the church. The first evidence of the feast is from Egypt. Further, pagan customs centering around the January calendar gravitated toward Christmas. Under natal day, Origen, or early Catholic writer, admitted. In the scriptures, no one is recorded to have kept a feast or held a great banquet on his birthday. It is only sinners like Pharaoh and Herod who make great rejoicings over the day on which they were born into this world. And if you look at the gifts that were given, like the three wise men gave to Christ, you'll realize who's the only person that received gifts that day. Did they exchange gifts or did they give gifts to Christ? And if you look at the times during that time, the tradition was you present gifts to a king. These men recognized the status of Christ and presented gifts to the king. But on top of that, the most memorable day, so most people tend to remember not the day someone's born, but the day they die and the purpose, the reason they died. We remember his death, not his birth. But, and then the 1956 Encyclopedia Americana, Christmas was not observed in the first centuries of the Christian church, since the Christian usage in general was to celebrate the death of remarkable persons. Right, there you go. But in the 5th century, the Western Church ordered the feast to be celebrated on the day of Mithridatic rites of the birth of the sun at the close of the Saturnalia, as no certain knowledge of the day of Christ's birth existed. So we already know. Go ahead.
I just want to add that we, like you said, are told that we should recognize the death over the birth, and we're not doing that. We make a huge deal out of the birth, and we call it Merry Christ Mass. All right, so Mary, happy, Mary, whatever, Christ, our Savior, Mass, which means the death, or what else is it that it means? It's basically dismissing Christ, or even if you're saying you're celebrating his birth, why would you say Merry Christ death? Like, that's ridiculous. Okay, and then we should be making a bigger deal of his death because that's what he said to do, right? So that we should be doing with Passover and memorializing that. Said that wrong. Anyways. Memorializing that. Okay. Anyways, but instead of that, we've changed it to Good Friday. Why are we calling the day of his death, which we should be getting together in the way he says to do, not this, Good Friday, whatever, which is, we can go into that where it's more of a nod to another Dagon fish god or whatever. But why are we doing this? We're calling it Good Friday, and then we're
not to mention the whole Easter celebration.
Yeah, and then Easter is Ishtar, so we're running around Happy Easter. We're yelling the name of another god in honor of his resurrection. We're calling the day of his death Good Friday, which is ridiculous. And then for his birth, we're running around saying Merry Death of Christ. Like, what are we doing? We don't even know what we're doing. And then, like, you'll have pastors and stuff that'll be like, how dare you say a swear word? And they'll bring up scriptures that talk about, like, cursing people with your mouth. But you don't realize that you're literally running around saying, Merry Christmas, Happy Easter. Like, that is cursing people.
Yeah.
Like, that is he says don't even speak the name of other gods. So in honor of him, you're saying that. In honor of his death, you're calling it Good Friday. Happy Good Friday. What are you, like, the things we have done. And that's the least recognized of all of them. The one we are told to make the biggest deal of, that he actually specifically says, like, do this. We turned it into a Good Friday, half-hour church service where we eat some crackers and take a shot of some grape juice. Like, it's a joke. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
My
I was just
rant
trying
is
to think
over.
if there was anything more in here. I mean, there's a lot in here. There's so much. You're going to find out everything about all the sacrifices, all the gods, and everything. So you'll find a lot in there. I'll probably put a link to the actual, because I'm not going to adjust my settings to show you the actual address. I'll just put a link later. But so then, what did we have? So then we have this. And this looks great at first. Rabbis bring Jesus home for Christmas. We're witnessing the undoing of 2,000 years of Jewish rejection and animosity towards Jesus, a miracle by any estimation. Absolutely, you would think, right? Under normal circumstances. Under a completely wrong mindset. Okay, my problem
Is a Christmas, yep.
So we see the UN saying they're preparing for the second coming of Christ. We see these guys setting up a temple for the new Messiah, but then we also see them kind of bringing this together. We see Chrislam coming up where they're trying to bring everything together.
The Abraham Accord.
Everything is going to bring everything together, and my concern is if they try to solidify him on feasts that celebrate Satan, then we're going to have a problem. And what exactly are we looking at here? My curiosity is, are they doing this on purpose to trip people up?
Yep.
Because the way I see it, what's Satan going to do when he's running out of time? He needs everybody to accept this false idea.
And have you noticed that all of these people who glorify Jesus, there's a lot of people who are big into the deception that are glorifying him, but they're all doing it in ways with some type of a deception. They're promoting the Christmas. They're promoting the QAnon stuff. They're pushing the climate change, 10 Commandments, all of that stuff. And yeah.
That's my biggest concern. I don't even want to talk about what this means, but point still being, Yehoshua did not celebrate any of these feasts, and he commanded that we follow Torah.
Yeah, and this is where we're seeing them. I think this is the coming together of the religions. We're seeing
the one world religion. Yeah. They have to be able to get along in order to form a one world religion. Somebody's got to give.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the other articles. Don't we have something from...
Oh, yeah, and here's just the smashing climate change 10 Commandments atop Mount Sinai. Yep. So that happened.
And if you look more... I'm not going to pull up the articles. We've already went over it, but you look more into that, the Pope and Jewish and Muslim leaders all meeting there. So it's all the faiths getting together to do this. And then... where was the one with all of those?
I know, I'm looking for it. Right here. So we look at Israel 365 news lately. So Sanhedrin, the biblical system of witnessing the new moon recreated in Jerusalem as in time of Sanhedrin. I just thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and then I feel like we keep getting pulled more towards the new moons.
Yep.
And
then first time building up. All right, Sanhedrin asks God to re-elect Trump.
Yeah, and we've gone over all of that, the temple coins and stuff. Is this
based upon the belief in God? You are well known as was your fathers, believers in God, and your successful predecessors who signed the addition of the words under God into the Pledge of Allegiance and President Ronald Reagan, right? So I guess they're just pushing for that. And then the stones for the altar of Paschal Lamb sacrifice are now being collected. In the wake of the coronavirus... I don't even want to finish that. Glad I caught myself. Rabbi who acts in most... so this is the guy that actually does most of the reenactments. So he's active in training the priests, requested that stones for a new altar be prepared in a manner that adheres to the more stringent requirements of a permanent altar. Sanhedrin gets authorization to use their trees for third temple.
And let's just reiterate that the temple is there. What needs to be done, it's there. No, we're not waiting for another temple or nothing. What's there is there. All of this temple stuff that's happening is them just, like it says, putting in a permanent altar. It's them doing more rituals and cleansing of the temple and rededication of it. That's what they're doing. But this rededication of the temple is not good. And many people within the Torah community are going to fall for this because they are, look right here, the King Cyrus, and they're looking at Trump. A lot of Torah observant Christians are looking at Trump as if they're a savior. They're looking at Big Brother Judah to follow their ways, and they are going to line up for whatever. And it's sad because it's just so close. It's so close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it looks good. We would love all this to be good, but this is all going to be destroyed.
Yep. Palestinians sent the Sanhedrin Organization of 70 Nations, except Roll on Third Temple. Sanhedrin attributes mass shooting epidemic to lack of adherence to Noahide laws. Organization of 70 Nations intended to replace United Nations.
All this stuff is very prophetic.
To take place on anniversary of creation of the world. Everything. Yep. Alright, and then I feel like
it was just us seeing the war on Christmas and Hanukkah.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Oh, no, that's right. I had it right here. War on Christmas. Okay.
I am not against Hanukkah, but I do believe that we should not be raising it to the significance of the other feasts. And I can see how this war on Christmas and Hanukkah and them bringing the Jewish, Muslim, and Christian leaders, the Pope, everybody together in these winter festivals, which are not commanded by Yah, because we're seeing in these times that there's just so much happening with them, and it's not good. We see that thing that came out on Hanukkah. We see the miracles and stuff that happened their time. We see the Trump and the golden statue during Purim, and then last year, what was he announced his second coming on Purim last year. We watched that. We have a video on that too. So we just see all these things that if you are following him and you're following quote unquote Big Brother Judah and the traditions instead of just focusing on what we are commanded to do first, and if you're raising these things above scripture, you could very easily fall into a deception.
Yeah.
With the
I need to turn this up.
Leaders. With this one move, Putin could literally shift power overnight, and there are warning signs popping up all over that crap is about to hit the fan in a big way. Don't be distracted by Christmas. You need to be paying attention because, in fact, the World Economic Forum is now issuing a major warning for the United States.
History is truly at a turning point.
Yes, Klaus Schwab's WEF is warning the U.S. is in for a major recession. I've got a lot of important developments to get to and some stunning data to show you on this. Austrian economist Lawrence Leppard, all of the pieces are in place, he says. The system is so close to blowing a gasket. When it does, the global print-a-thon is going to change the world as we know it. You will either be in a position or you won't. Grab a chair before the music stops. Ouch. So as an example, it all started with a note from Credit Suisse contributor Zoltan Pozsar. Now, Pozsar, you'll recall, has been sounding the alarm about collapse of Western money structures that were put in place after World War II, better known as Bretton Woods. Now, he says the countries that have gold, oil, and other commodities will lead the world going forward. And we late this week issued a stunning alert about Putin, and his message has now gone viral. If Putin decides to flip the switch on the Western price cap on its oil by only accepting gold for oil, we would see the price of gold skyrocket to $3,600 an ounce.
So that's pretty much all I'm going to point out on that particular video. But yeah, it considering the war that's going on and what Putin is talking about trying to do, it's basically going to cut us off and run us to the ground, because everybody knows we don't really have necessarily gold anymore, if you know the truth. We're basically just printing fake paper for numbers. So it would be interesting to see if Putin did decide to require gold for the oil.
We're expecting something big economically to come next too, because we see that number portion, the Solomon 666, and with the mark of the beast. We do think we're waiting on that part of the mark of the beast to come. If you gotta watch our video on Rumble for that one, I don't even want to speak much more on that. The money portion is coming, and I think that ending this here with this and letting us go off to study that a little bit more, because I think we're gonna see a slow progression and change with the economics. And to see that part, I would suggest looking at probably Alexandra and her research with Nasara and Jasara, the Saint Germain funds, and the gold-backed money that will be coming out. So basically everything has got to crash so it gets real bad, and then there's going to be someone that comes in with a really great solution, lots of money. Everyone obviously super materialistic and loves money, so it's going to sound real good, but I believe things are going to get real bad afterwards, because the idea of it is that they give everybody the same amount of money, everybody is debt free, and then what? What is the value of money at that point?
Right.
And then what's... So I think there will be a short time where it looks real great and everybody's super happy, and then it's the value of a dollar will be nothing at that point.
Yeah.
That's my guess, anyway.
And then, of course,
I think we'll see.
I just want to show The False Messiah is Coming, the Messiah Deception Part 6 by The Donkey Speaks. I just wanted to let people say to actually go look at that. The Donkey Speaks.
Oh, yeah.
The False Messiah is
He does a really good, that whole series is really good. Really is.
But
And
this right here, pointing out, yeah. They're going to be eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day of Noah. Yeah. But this just goes over a lot of the differences of the things that we've been mistaught, including making graven images and not taking the name of Elohim in vain, making it meaningless or empty or void of truth or lie, keeping the Sabbath, right? But yeah, he goes over. I hate to do that. Definitely need to watch it. I hate to do it to you guys, but you guys need to watch it because it's just honest truth. And a lot of the stuff that's coming, yeah, a lot of the stuff that they're doing that we kind of covered. So, but anyway,
I think so.
we got all those. I mean, then yeah, just the winter storms that were happening. Yeah, we didn't go over that.
The last part I wanted to cover, as we've seen on Christmas, and it being almost like a choice of where are you going to sit? Are you going to do the Sabbath and the new moon? Or are you going to do Christmas and Easter, or Christmas Eve, whatever? And then you see here where people are being frozen, flights stopped, power outages, and we read over the verses where it says that he's going to turn her feasts into mourning. These are her feasts. These are the feasts of the harlot. And this is where we see this. And I think that's where we'll see the feast turning into mourning. And we've been watching for this Purim coming up. According to Leland Jones' calendar, he has marked that the Antichrist will be killed on Purim. Now, that is the same time as CPAC this year. So what that means, is it a spiritual thing? Is it literal? I do not know, but I'm definitely watching for that day, and I do kind of lean towards it being a literal thing, and that would be another one of those turning the feast into mourning, because like we've seen before in like the escalation of this, the 1 year on Purim with the golden statue of Trump, and then we see him announcing his second coming, and then if he is killed this year, that's, that escalation, and then what if his, son steps up in his name? I don't know, man. It would be turning your feast into mourning again. So,
Oh yeah.
But-
Definitely.
because maybe it's him stepping down, maybe he disappears. Who knows? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe we're watching for nothing. But
Maybe.
his dates and stuff have been pretty point on. So I think we got it all.
Yep. Remember your commandments. No, I was joking. All right. But yeah. I guess I'll talk to you later, chick. That is it.
All right, good night.
Peace.